It took months of painstaking diplomacy to build it. Back-channel negotiations, American pressure, Qatari mediation. The quiet, exhausting work of convincing two deeply hostile military forces to step back from the edge of a conflict that had already killed thousands and displaced over 1 million people. The ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon was fragile from the moment it was signed. Every analyst who studied it said the same thing privately. This holds only as long as both sides choose to let it hold. Israel has just made a choice, and Iran has just responded to that choice with language that has not been heard since the region stood at the precipice of open war. In the past 48 hours, Israeli military forces have conducted a series of strikes against targets inside Lebanese territory. Strikes that, depending on which side you ask, are either legitimate defensive operations against Hezbollah rearmament infrastructure or deliberate, calculated violations of a ceasefire agreement that the entire international community staked its credibility on enforcing. Iran's response has been immediate, public, and unambiguous. Senior Iranian officials, speaking through both official state channels and direct statements to international media, have warned of what they describe as strong responses to what Tehran characterizes as Israeli aggression against Lebanese sovereignty. The language used is not diplomatic hedging. It is not the carefully calibrated ambiguity that governments deploy when they want to signal displeasure without committing to action. It is a warning, delivered in terms that every military planner in the region understands with precision. The ceasefire that was supposed to hold, the agreement that American diplomats pointed to as evidence that de-escalation in the Middle East was still achievable, is now hanging by a thread so thin that the slightest additional pressure could snap it entirely. And if it snaps, what follows is not a return to the limited conflict that the ceasefire interrupted. What follows, given the military escalations of recent months, given Iran's demonstrated ballistic missile capabilities, given Hezbollah's rebuilt arsenal and hardened resolve, is something categorically more dangerous than what came before. The question that intelligence agencies, allied governments, and military planners are urgently working to answer right now is deceptively simple. Is this the moment the ceasefire dies? And if it does, who fires first, at what, and with how much? Those are not rhetorical questions. They are operational ones. And the answers being developed in planning cells from Tel Aviv to Tehran to Washington in this precise moment will determine whether the next chapter of this conflict is measured in days or in years. We are going to take you inside this crisis. The diplomatic architecture that is cracking, the military calculations on both sides, the intelligence picture that is driving decisions that could reshape the Middle East for a generation. This is the story that demands your full attention right now. Subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications, because the next development in this story will not wait for a convenient news cycle. To understand why this ceasefire is collapsing and why Iran's warning carries the specific weight that it does, you have to trace the architecture of the conflict that the ceasefire was designed to contain. Because this is not a crisis that emerged suddenly. It is the latest chapter in a confrontation that has been building layer by layer for nearly 5 decades. 1982, the birth of Hezbollah. Israel invades Lebanon to destroy the Palestine Liberation Organization's military infrastructure in the south of the country. The invasion achieves its immediate tactical objective, but it produces an unintended strategic consequence of historic proportions. In the chaos and suffering of occupied southern Lebanon, Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps quietly begins organizing, training, and financing a new armed movement drawn from Lebanon's Shia population. That movement is Hezbollah, the Party of God. From its earliest days, Hezbollah is not simply a Lebanese political and military organization. It is the forward arm of Iranian strategic power in the Levant, the instrument through which Tehran projects military pressure against Israel without requiring Iranian forces to cross a single international border. Iran supplies the weapons. Iran provides the doctrine, Iran trains the commanders, and Hezbollah fights the wars. It is an arrangement that has proven over 4 decades to be one of the most strategically effective proxy relationships in modern military history. 2000, Israeli withdrawal from Lebanon. After 18 years of grinding occupation, Israel withdraws its forces from southern Lebanon. Hezbollah claims, and is widely credited with, forcing that withdrawal through sustained guerrilla pressure. The organization's prestige inside Lebanon and across the Arab world explodes. Its recruitment accelerates. Its weapons stockpiles grow. 2006, the Second Lebanon War. Israel launches a major military campaign against Hezbollah following the capture of 2 Israeli soldiers near the border. 34 days of intensive airstrikes and ground operations. Hezbollah absorbs the assault and continues firing rockets into northern Israel throughout. The war ends without a decisive Israeli victory. UN Security Council Resolution 1701 establishes a ceasefire and calls for Hezbollah's disarmament south of the Litani River. Hezbollah never disarms. The international community never enforces the resolution. And in the years that follow, Hezbollah rebuilds, larger, better armed, and more deeply embedded in Lebanese society than before. 2023. October 7th and the opening of the Northern Front. The Hamas attack on southern Israel triggers the deadliest conflict in the region since the 2006 war. Within days, Hezbollah opens what it calls a front of support, a sustained campaign of rocket, missile, and anti-tank fire against northern Israeli communities and military positions. Israel responds with airstrikes across southern Lebanon. A grinding, low-intensity exchange continues for nearly a year, displacing tens of thousands of civilians on both sides of the border. September to November 2024. Israel dramatically escalates its military campaign against Hezbollah. A series of extraordinary operations, including the targeted killing of Hezbollah's Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah in a deep penetration airstrike on Beirut, decapitate the organization's senior leadership. Israeli ground forces enter southern Lebanon. Hezbollah's command infrastructure, communications networks, and weapons storage facilities sustain unprecedented damage. November 2024. The ceasefire. Under intense American diplomatic pressure, Israel and Lebanon reach a ceasefire agreement brokered by the United States and France. The terms are clear in their broad outlines. Israeli forces withdraw from Lebanese territory over a 60-day period. Hezbollah pulls its forces north of the Litani River. The Lebanese armed forces deploy to the south. A monitoring mechanism oversees compliance. The agreement is announced with carefully calibrated optimism. American officials describe it as a durable framework. French diplomats express cautious confidence. Lebanese political leaders, exhausted by months of devastating conflict, welcome the pause. But within days of the agreement taking effect, the first violations are reported. Israeli strikes continue against targets described as Hezbollah weapons infrastructure. Hezbollah accuses Israel of systematically breaching the agreement. The monitoring mechanism proves slower and less authoritative than its architects had hoped. Early 2025. The erosion begins. The 60-day withdrawal timeline passes without full Israeli compliance. Israeli forces maintain positions at several points inside Lebanese territory, citing security concerns. The Lebanese government protests. The United States urges patience. Iran watches. And now, in the past 48 hours, Israel has conducted the strikes that have pushed the ceasefire from fragile to failing. The history that brought this moment into existence is not background noise. It is the precise context without which Iran's warning of strong responses cannot be accurately understood. Tehran has invested 40 years and incalculable resources in building Hezbollah as its strategic deterrent against Israel. What is happening in Lebanon right now is not a peripheral concern for Iranian leadership. It is an existential one.